Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Well, the August primary is coming up, and Missouri voters have a number of issues on the ballot. Today, we're going to talk about that, as well as get an update on issues and topics from Jefferson City with our state senator, Ron Richard.
Was a state rep at one
That's
time.
right. You have been a state rep, now state senator, 32nd District, Ron Richard. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Judy. Nice to see you again.
Appreciate you coming in. And August primary, people are going to have a lot of state issues. Like talk about that and kind of get an update. But I guess to start off, you were recently in the news, and the governor came to town and signed a bill that you and your wife were instrumental in.
Actually, it wasn't me, as my wife Patty. She did a great job on that bill on mammography and dense breast tissue. She did that along with Senator Dan Brown's wife Kathy. So I claim no credit for that. That was all her, and they worked the entire building. They did a great job, and maybe it'll help ladies, women get early detection and save some cancer.
So it really shows you the wide scope of the things that you deal with in Jefferson City.
Well, it was important to her. That makes it important to me.
And of course, a lot of citizens have that concern, so she reflected the concerns of many citizens. Well, as we're in the middle of the summer and you've been away from Jefferson City for a short while, what is your feeling as far as in general how things are going for the state of Missouri? If everybody were to say, well, how are we doing now in the middle of the summer?
Well, as somebody that dealt mostly with economic development issues, and when I was mayor, when I was in the House, I chaired economic development, and Speaker of the House now in the Senate, I always thought job issues were more important. I still try to deal with that and try to push job creation issues for the state of Missouri and Southwest Missouri. So we could do a better job on that. The tax revenue is a little bit flat. I think that sends a message. We just do a better job of creating jobs and training young people to get them to stay here. So yeah, disappointed about the revenue, but it is what it is. We just deal with it. The governor's withheld. I think some been overzealous, and I think he's withheld some pending what's going to happen in veto session, which we'll decide on some of his issues of what he thinks is overspending. We'll deal with those in due course. I think some of those issues are not necessarily due to tax or tax credits. I'll give you an example. We have Department of Revenue that's starting to go out to business and say, what this activity you're doing now is taxable. We're reinterpreting the statute. Before, the statute said a certain business, and I'm not going to get into too much detail,
right,
but a certain business may not have a tax liability on certain activities. And now the revenue is saying, well, yes, you do. They're going to go back 3 or 4 years and assess a penalty. And we had some legislation, the governor vetoed it. I think we're going to take a shot at overriding that. Department of Revenue has been overreaching in their activity and some of this reallocation of the statute, so we're not going to allow that.
So as we hear about the governor vetoing certain bills, you will have that session coming up in September then to discuss what you want to do.
Yeah, and some of the other tax cut issues may or may not be overridden. It just depends. It has to go through both bodies. So that's something we'll be talking about in the next several weeks and get ready for September.
Right. And as you mentioned, the governor withholding some funding. Education's one example.
Well, he always holds some education. Yeah, it's but you can only hold from certain places where general revenue is. It's higher education, K through 12, prisons, and they're pretty lean and mean right now. So, or social services, and yeah, we're going to. It's going to be a lively discussion as last time.
Great. Well, let's talk a little bit about what's coming up in August. We're recording this program prior to the August election, and there are some issues on the constitutional amendments. I mentioned there's actually 5 on the ballot in August. Is this a higher than normal number for this time of year to have an August election?
It's been the trend of the legislature that when they have a governor of an opposing party, they won't sign legislation to send it to the vote of the people. So that's just something that's happened when you have a legislature and a governor of different parties. But yes, to your question, that is a high number.
High number. And how is it decided? The voters might be curious. I know we also have issues on the ballot in November. How is it decided which ones are August, which ones are November?
That's a governor's prerogative. And for example, the transportation tax, we thought that was going on November, and governor decided to go on August.
So that's when we're going to talk about.
That's what we're going to do. We'll vote on in August.
Well, let's talk about some of those issues that are coming up. The transportation is actually a sales tax proposal for transportation.
3/4% sales tax. The discussion has been how you're going to fund transportation needs in Missouri. The Fed hasn't been funding transportation on their level and sending money back to the states when we pay the federal gas tax. So the issue is, if we're going to replace these 600 or 800, 900 more bridges, if we're going to expand highways, if we're going to widen I-70 and do course down the road I-44 at some point in time due to traffic, expand ports, how do we fund it? Some say this is the right way, some say expanding the fuel tax. I believe this is probably a more fair way if you're going to, and it's only for 10 years. If you're going to get out and drive and you pay a sales tax, I believe a funding mechanism is important. If you had to raise the gas tax, Judy, I mean, gas would be over $4 again. I'm not sure citizens would go for a 30, 40, 50%
so that
tax
would hurt their pocketbooks more of the gas tax.
Well, you know, I'm inclined to believe so. So this is worthy to go to vote of the people. We'll see what they decide, but
there is a 10-year sunset provision on this.
10-year sunset, and it also gives 5% of the revenue to cities and counties to do some activities or do some structures in their area that they couldn't afford to do before. So it shares with everybody.
So a statewide proposal, but each area of the state, and here with Southwest Missouri, the Joplin region, there are projects that would be tied into this.
Yeah, and I think the media's done a pretty good job of talking about what those projects might be.
Right, so people can follow up on what's happening there. So looking at that, in the past there's been talk about toll roads and so forth. With this passage of this, is there a clause in there that Missouri's not going to go to toll roads?
Right, that is true. And tolls, I asked a question to some. I said, if you had a toll road I-70, what would the charge be? They're talking like $20-some to $30-some for a car, and 3 or 4 times that for a truck. I mean, all that's going to do is force traffic going outer roads, not on I-70, and then if you toll I-44, I mean, that's not going to work. So that was part of the discussion. So, you know, I think tolling is maybe it's something for the future. Some states like Indiana and Texas have sold highways, and the toll pays those investors. I'm not sure we're at that point yet. I mean, going from Joplin to Tulsa and paying $2 or $3 or $4, that's not the toll that we're talking about. It'd be massive because it's so much.
The St. Louis to Kansas City trip would be an expensive trip, just to
well, if the information I have, and of course in Jeff City too, there's always a Jeff City two-step, which is sometimes you get the truth and sometimes you don't, so you have to work a little bit harder. So I try to figure out what exactly the truth is.
But this is a measure that the General Assembly decided we're going to give it to the voters to decide. It's generated through the General Assembly. So it comes up in August on the ballot, and the people will have a say in what's happening there along those lines. Other amendments, when you're looking at the list, I looked online, there's one dealing with agricultural production. That,
the right to farm, Farm Bureau, soybean, cattlemen, pork producers, chicken producers, all the ag groups have come together believing that there is an assault by the HSUS from back east of infringing on the rights of agriculture people to do their job, which is to raise products that can go to the store and stuff. Now, that argument is swinging back and forth, but with all the agriculture groups behind it, and it's reinforcing. I mean, you think you'd have a right to farm and raise livestock and raise crops, but there is those from other parts of the country that's coming into Missouri, and they believe that there's certain restrictions you ought to have on property, and we believe that it's infringement on private property rights, what HSUS is doing. And
so it's kind of keeping things in Missouri, not controlled by outside of it.
Well, there's a lot of influence, a lot of money coming in from outside Missouri trying to influence this, and so, you know, like the transportation, Judy, we'll see where it goes. I support the right to farm. I think it's a good idea, and you know, the food that we have in the stores doesn't magically appear. You know, it has to come from some way. And we get a lot of people, more than northern Missouri, we found out that people are selling their homes for big prices in California or something and buy property, and all of a sudden they'll buy a property and say, well, this smells like a farm or something. Well, hello, it's been a farm for 300 years. So, and that gets into zoning issues and some planning issues and some water issues. And so I think right to farms is good, and I hope, and I don't really get out in front of these issues. I let the voters get the information, but I'm pretty adamant about right to farm. I think it's important to our industry and agriculture in Missouri.
Agriculture is a major industry in the state as far as
Well,
economic. You talked about economic development. It does play a major role.
It is, yes. It's not the biggest employer, but it's the biggest one dollar-wise.
Dollar-wise for the state. There's also an issue dealing with Amendment 2, right to keep and bear arms. Can you explain how this one ties in? We hear so many debates about,
Well, this is a resolution that reinforces the Second Amendment and says that your right to bear arms will not be infringed upon. And actually, I'm getting sued by a number of people around the state because I co-sponsored that legislation. Kurt Schaefer from Columbia sponsored it. And we're getting sued by the police chief of St. Louis and some lady in Kansas City that believe that they don't believe it's a fundamental right, the Second Amendment, and they don't need to be reinstated. We believe it does, and we're pressing forward. There's some briefs being filed today and tomorrow, and we'll see what the judges do about. We're trying to keep it on the ballot, and I've had to hire outside counsel to defend us because we weren't sure that the Attorney General Koster was actually going to be a defender in this lawsuit to the level we thought was necessary. So, next few days I'll have some news for you.
Good, okay. Amendment 8, veterans lottery tickets. We hear a lot about the lottery.
Yeah, I'm not too excited about this one. However, I let it go when I was majority leader. I decide what's going to be debated and how long. But those who are for it believe that a lottery ticket that's directed straight to veterans would have some benefit. I'm not sure that sell lottery tickets to benefit the veterans and those social ills that have with gambling. I mean, but I guess it's okay. We got lottery tickets going to education, so I allowed it to go, and it passed by a big number, so we'll see how it works. But that's what it's for, is to fund just the veterans and some of their veteran issues, and maybe it's timely based on how the veterans are being cared for in Washington, D.C., and the Veterans Administration has not done a very good job for 20, 30 years, so maybe this will help our veterans in Missouri that live here. So I thought it deserved a chance to go to vote, and we'll see how people feel about it.
You mentioned the lottery tying into education. That's the kind of the initial lottery that you had in the state of Missouri to help education. How do you feel that has developed over the years? The times we hear lottery sales are down, so we are hurting funding for education.
The gambling issue, particularly with casinos close to Missouri, there's a lot of social ills. I mean, people are losing their retirement, and people are losing income and houses and homes. Do you use gambling to fund other issues that's important, social issues, veterans, school? I guess you do.
A lot of states are doing this.
Yeah, but because one does one, do we do it? It's been done, years ago before I got there. It's a law, so I'll abide by it. I'm just not sure gambling is a way to fund education and other issues, but it is what it is, Judy. So I guess we'll just press forward and see what happens.
See what people have to say. You mentioned other states. I know there has been concerns. Of course, we're Southwest Missouri. We have Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, just right next to each other here. Concerns about businesses going out of state. I know there was some talk about trying to help the competition with Kansas and their laws and so forth. How do you feel Missouri is developing along those lines as far as trying to keep the businesses in Missouri or recruiting them to Missouri instead of going across the state lines?
It's an issue in Southwest Missouri, but in Kansas City, Kansas, even more of an issue. We passed some legislation, the governor even signed it, kind of the border war bill, that you couldn't take one company across the state line road going from one to Missouri to Kansas, Missouri, and re-incentivize. And that was happening a lot. Down here, it hasn't happened too much. When I was Speaker of the House, Speaker O'Neill in Kansas, we had a deal. We were going to try and be the first two states in the country go after a major, either an aircraft manufacturer or a car manufacturer. And we would say, we'd put it either in Kansas, Missouri, whichever worked, and we'd train the workforce to do it. But he got beaten in his election several years ago, and that automotive plant never materialized, although we got Ford in Kansas City that expanded. So partnerships are important. I think this region's done a pretty good job working with the Prosperity Initiative and getting all players from different cities and counties and states I think Rob O'Brien's done a nice job of that, and all of his members in these other communities. So try to keep the wars from going on. I mean, what benefits these other communities benefits Joplin too, so we need to keep that in mind.
You know, I've heard that said, you know, even though the business may not be in the city limits of Joplin, if it's in the region, those people may come here to shop, but they come here to go to school. So
well, that holds true, and it held true when I was at City Hall, and I think it still holds true.
And tying that together. So when we get into the competition between states, it's a different type of level of competition. But
it's a lot of, yeah, I mean, we're having trouble now recruiting. We have a lot of high-tech jobs, and getting those kids trained. We're having to import people with education in technology and the STEM initiative. So we need to do a better job of getting kids funneled into a job market that really has big demand. And so we're going to try to look at that, the state, and see if we can help locals do that.
So does that tie into the local school districts as well
Yeah.
as on
Well,
through higher education?
I hope so, yes.
And
Yeah,
preparing
particularly out here at Southern, yeah.
and provide those programs for those students. Business won't come unless they have the people who can fill those jobs, basically.
Yeah, well, that's pretty intuitive. That's right.
Tying that together. One other amendment in August deals with electronic communications and searches.
Yeah, that's just we believe that some of the state agencies, and back to Department of Revenue, and some of the federal issues are data mining off information that's either on your cell phone or information that you're providing to Department of Revenue on conceal and carry permits or on licenses. And we believe that information is yours and shouldn't be sold, and it should be deleted at some point in time. We've had an issue this last year with Department of Revenue again. And we had to go to court, and we got that resolved. Finally, the governor decided to have Revenue quit doing that. So we believe that this data is personal, and this overreaching of government coming in and try to take that information, either with your cell phone or any personal item that you have on the data is personal, you or your family, we believe is personal and shouldn't be subject to, and if it is subject, that law enforcement need it for police or for public safety, they need to get a warrant and go through the same things they do now.
Go through the legal processes along that.
Right.
And of course, all these state issues are on the website. The state has a website where they can find out further details, and probably being an educated voter is an important part in any election. This is one example.
Well, you'd like to think, yeah, you'd like to think you'd know a little bit about it before you voted on it, but anyway, going to the polls is going to be important between now, 14 and 16 coming up.
And of course, in November we have the fall of elections where we have more constitutional amendments, but also there's statewide races and
Yeah, that's another part of my job. Is I'm out. We've already recruited candidates. I'm making sure the candidates we have are doing their job, that are spending the money that they raise in good fashion. So I'm on the road quite a bit still. Same thing as I did when I was Speaker of the House. I'd try to increase the majority of the Republican Party.
Now, in your role in the Senate, on the Senate side, leadership role, some people might be wondering, well, explain how you play a role in that leadership position in the Senate.
Okay, I was elected majority leader 2 years ago, and it looks like I'll be elected again. What happens, there's a calendar which lists every bill that the President of the Senate gets out of committee and puts on the calendar. Then I take from the calendar and decide what bills can be brought up for debate and how long it will be debated. And usually my effort is not that important until after the break, when time is a necessity, because the debate time is narrow. The closer you get to the end of session, the less time you have. So it's more important for me to decide what's important to the state of Missouri, what's important to Southwest Missouri. So
it becomes a challenge after that break.
Well,
it
does, and we work a lot of hours. I mean, I get to the Capitol anywhere from 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I usually leave anywhere from 10 to 12 o'clock at night, just getting ready for the next day, understanding what's on the people's mind, the senators' minds, and trying to get ready for the next day.
Have you found in your years in Jefferson City that there are more proposals that increasing each year, or more people wanting to get bills out for discussion?
Everybody's in love with their legislation. I don't file too many. Even the legislation that was filed last year, they got that $14 million for the tornado zone coming out of the that was but I didn't do it because it looked like a conflict of interest. So I got two friends of mine, the budget chairman from Columbia and a friend of mine, John Lamp from St. Louis County, and they did it, so it didn't look like it was something that I was doing for myself, and they did it, and I got the time for them. Everybody files a bill. I mean, we get thousands of pieces of legislation, and boy, people start coming in my door, got to have this heard, got to have this debated. Well, half of it is garbage. I mean, goofy, weird. I mean, who cares? I don't care.
So you have to weigh the importance to the state and to the people.
And yeah, you'd like to think so. So I do that, and but you like to stay true to what we're supposed to be doing, which we're not going to pass laws just for the pure effect of passing something. Sometimes killing something's just as good, and I'm not afraid of killing stuff.
So if somebody has an idea it's not going to work, you tell them this isn't going to work.
Oh, that's a bad idea. Apparently it must be working, but I've had very good success. I mean, I'm the first person in 100 years to ever be elected Speaker of the House, Majority Leader of the Senate. So excuse me. So I guess some things I'm doing right. I'm sure it's not all right, but.
Well, in your role of leadership, you're getting a feel not only for the Southwest Missouri region you're serving, but the statewide. I mean, you're talking about people from other areas of the state, Columbia, St. Louis. You network with those other legislators.
Yeah, like I said, I'm on the road all the time. I mean, I know what's important to Kansas City and St. Louis and Columbia and Sykeston. Yeah, they come all the time. And what we try to do is make sure what's important to them, if they need a project or something, it applies to everybody in the state of Missouri. So that way you don't cherry pick and do something that's really important. I mean, we did that Boeing airliner. We tried to get that from the state of Washington. We almost had it, but that union signed a contract that we thought we had. But because we worked so fast last year getting that done and diligently, Boeing we met with a couple weeks ago in St. Louis, and they're supposed to be bringing some other activities to St. Louis just because they understand that when it comes to job creation, we believe that's important, and Boeing has spin-offs. Leg and Platt does work for Boeing here, so I mean it creates jobs locally too.
Subcontractors all around the state helping them out and working together. So in terms of economic development, it's an ongoing thing. You're always keeping your ears open. You're finding out about opportunities. You probably
and what other states are doing. I go meet with other senators around the country from time to time. I'll be going to one or two. I haven't been doing too much of that because I've been paying attention of what's going on to get this rebuilding thing effort, what I can do in the state on this tornado a couple of years ago. But now that the city's got that going very well, and so now I'm trying to figure out what other states are doing and see if there's something we're missing or an idea. I mean, not all ideas are pure or my ideas. So
can we
I'm not opposed to stealing an idea and making it better.
You mentioned the tornado recovery. Do you still have people ask you in Jefferson City, how's Joplin doing?
Yeah, still do, and we still have people calling and say, well, I didn't think I got the right settlement for insurance or this and this, what several years ago. So we're still helping people, and people still ask, even around the country. I was in California to see my daughter. I mean, it's still known, but I think we're doing better than most. We're still doing better than people down in Louisiana, Katrina, and over in Alabama. So Joplin's got a great effort and great people.
Great. Well, you talk about working with constituents, so let's talk about that for a few minutes. So you obviously are representing a pretty large district, but you do hear a lot from the voters, from your constituents?
We do, and we have a legislative office on 32nd Street that deals with issues here, along with my office in Jeff City, and then I have staff members in Jeff City that are always on the phone. So we're not hard to find, and I'm around town and around Dade County, Jasper, and Newton all the time too. But usually people know I'll tell them what's on my mind and give them as you probably know.
So they will come in and give you their opinion as well.
Oh yeah, and sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't, but I always give them the courtesy of, and sometimes you got a great idea, sometimes you take a part of their idea or something, and we have a lot of people on federal issues, passports, and we have nothing to do with Fed. We have a good relationship with Roy Blunt and Billy Long, and we'll call them, and now we have people in Washington, D.C. that we deal with, so we can help on passports, and we help on veterans issues, and we help on Social Security issues, so we've been there long enough to have a rapport. I still get calls from clear around the state. They still think I'm Speaker of the House. Wanting some help, don't know who to call. So Gwen, who runs our office here, Gwen Delano, we handle them all. We don't care. I mean, it's if someone has a problem, they call us. We take care of it.
And I imagine it's important to really meet the people, that you're in Jefferson City meeting the other politicians, but to come back to your district, to your region, and actually talk to John Q. Public and have them come up to you on the street.
I've been around a long time, and from City Hall to Jefferson City, I'm not hard to find, and people usually pick me out. And I was at NATO last year, I went with the governor. Wanted me to go over to have some meetings with in Brussels and Paris and London. And to his credit, he took me because I know more about economic development than he does. And we had some, some fruitful meetings. We like to think, there is a
recruiting the business from Europe, right?
It doesn't hurt to ask them to come, or and the companies we met with had presence in Missouri, and we're trying to get them to expand. And they thought that the commander of NATO thought I was the governor, and I said, well, no, the governor's back there. So I still get a little bit of criticism, or not criticism. I get a little people kidding me about I look like the governor. I said, well, that's okay. There's worse people look like. The governor look like me. I don't say I look like governor. He looks like me.
We compare each other, right? Find it together. Well, looking down the road to the future, your feelings about, obviously we've got the veto session coming up. What else, facing the state opportunities?
Well, we've got to push through the budget. Tom Flanagan, I hope he's going to be the next House chair of budget. Rick Stream, who's the budget chair now, is going to be term limited. And the budget chair in the Senate and the House start getting together, deciding what the revenue is going to be, and decide how we're going to deal with a shortfall and how we're going to deal with a little less revenue. So I'll meet with them shortly, at least the Senate budget chairman. I'll meet with him, I think, sometime late August. And then we get ready for the veto session, which decide how many bills, or if any. Right. Sometimes we don't override any of them. And then after that first part of September, then we'll start meeting in Jeff City, getting ready for legislation. Filing is December 1st, and then my people start, along with me, start reading all of it, decide what was going to be our priorities, and then meet with all the senators and decide what their priorities, and I'll meet with the new Speaker of the House, decide what the House priorities are, and I'll meet with these local representatives, what their priorities are, try to get us all sifted and try to get that pushed forward.
So when you start in January, you have some sort of plan in place. You know where you're headed.
Yeah, having a plan is better than no plan. I like having a plan.
Have a plan and what is going on. So, well, what do you enjoy the most as far as being in your position? You've been in Jefferson City now for a number of years. Now with the Senate, somebody said, what do you like most about being a state senator?
Some people love it up there. Some people just can't live without it. I'm amazed at how I got to where I am. I never thought I'd be elected to the city council, let alone mayor, let alone and when I walked in and elected, when Chuck Surface was term limited, I took his spot in the House. I walked in the House and I looked up in the big room and I said, I'm 55 years old, all these young guys around me, what do I do now? Guys my age are retiring, so I'm going in there, and I was elected speaker. I couldn't believe I was elected speaker. I'm just amazed at how much confidence people have in me doing the right thing, and I'll do the right thing.
Be there to help them throughout this, what's coming up. Great. Well, thank you very much for visiting with me today.
Well,
I appreciate you taking the time.
When I get finished in 4 more years, we'll come back and we'll go through the whole thing.
It'd be great to have a great retrospective. And of course, in the meantime, we'll follow up on the issues.
And good luck on your reunion out here, and we'll try to be here for that.
Okay. We have 30 years of TV at Missouri Southern.
Yeah.
So great. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us and finding out today what's happening in the state of Missouri. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next week at the same time on the station. We'll see you then.